I woke up before the sun had a chance to stretch across the windows. The apartment was still and quiet, save for the soft hum of the heater kicking on. I made myself a cup of coffee, the rich smell comforting in its predictability. I turned on a podcast about emotional boundaries, something I'd been working on silently for years. The host was saying something about people-pleasing as self-erasure, and I nodded, not realizing how soon her words would echo. I sat at my small kitchen table, opened my journal, and began writing out my goals for the new year. "Stop apologizing when I've done nothing wrong," I scribbled. "Be more honest. Say no." That's when my phone rang. The name on the screen turned my stomach. Mom-in-law. No heart emoji, no nickname, just her name. Formal, sharp. I hesitated, could pretend I didn't see it. But then, I answered. "Hello?" Her voice came in flat, businesslike. "Hi." I mumbled a greeting back, already bracing. She didn't ask how I was or even say happy holidays. She jumped right in. "If you want to join us for New Year, come clean the house." I blinked. "Sorry, what?" "You heard me," she said. "Come a day early, scrub the baseboards, organize the pantry. You want to be part of this family? Then act like it. It's tradition. You're the youngest. It's your job." I felt my pulse rise. The words didn't sting because they were shocking. They stung because they weren't. I'd heard versions of them before, masked in politeness, wrapped in guilt trips, delivered with backhanded smiles. But this time, they came stripped bare, unapologetic. "You're the helper," she said. She chuckled like it was an inside joke, but I wasn't laughing. Is everyone else helping too?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They don't need to," she said breezily. "They've earned their place." I said nothing. Couldn't. My lips were moving, but no sound came. I stared at the coffee cup, the steam now gone, cold, like her. The call ended without a goodbye. I stayed seated. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because something inside me cracked, not shattered, just cracked enough to let something else come in, or maybe leak out. I thought about last Christmas, me in the kitchen, scrubbing casserole dishes while they toasted champagne. I remembered Thanksgiving, being asked to serve first and eat last, all of it, always delivered with a smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. "You're the helper." I whispered the phrase aloud. It sounded worse in my voice. I got up, walked in circles around the apartment, not pacing, just moving, trying to make sense of the fury bubbling up through the years of silence I'd mistaken for grace. I sat again, picked up the pen, and wrote, "Why am I always the one keeping the peace?" I could hear my mother's voice from my childhood. "Be nice. Help your elders. Good girls don't talk back." But where had all that nice gotten me? Into rooms where I served, not sat. Into a family that saw me as staff, not a daughter-in-law. I stared out the window. Gray skies. Stillness. No clarity. Was I overreacting? Or finally reacting? I imagined not going, skipping the new year altogether. Let them gossip. Let them label me ungrateful or difficult. They already had their version of me built in their minds. I opened my phone and started typing. "Thanks for the invite, but I won't be coming this year." I read it twice, 3 times. My thumb hovered over the send button. It felt like I was standing at the edge of something. Not a cliff, but maybe a bridge I was finally ready to burn. Then, a knock. 3 short raps. Too early for anyone to visit. I froze. Not because I was scared, but because I wasn't expecting anything. I opened the door, and there he was. I hadn't seen him in years, and in his hand was something that would unravel everything I thought I knew. The knock at the door was sharp, impatient. I still hadn't sent the text. The lemon bars from Maris sat untouched on the counter, and I hadn't even turned off the podcast still playing softly in the background. I opened the door, and there she was. Celine, she hadn't changed much. Her hair was a little shorter, her nails still immaculate, and she wore that familiar half-smile, the one that tried to pass for warmth but never reached her eyes. She held a small bakery box in one hand and stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "Wow," she said, glancing around. "Cozy little place you've got here. Real minimalist." She set the box down on the table like it was some sort of peace offering, then gave me a long, deliberate look. "How have you really been, Lyra?" The way she emphasized really made my skin prickle. "I've been fine," I said, folding my arms. "Busy, working." She nodded slowly, walking around like she owned the place. "Maris is worried. She said you might skip New Year's this year. She asked me to stop by, smooth things over." I watched her closely. Celine never showed up without a motive. This wasn't concern, it was reconnaissance. "She's worried?" I echoed. "She didn't mean anything by the call," Celine added quickly. "It's just how she is. You know Mom means well." I almost laughed. That phrase had become a running joke in my head over the years. She means well, the universal excuse for cruelty dressed up in pearls. "She told me to come clean her house," I said flatly. Celine sat down, adjusting her blouse. "Everyone pitches in their own way." "By bringing wine and gossip?" I asked. "While I'm scrubbing grout?" She tilted her head, that condescending sister-in-law smirk forming again. "Lyra, this isn't about chores. It's about family traditions." She was stalling, trying to keep me talking. That's when I saw it. Her purse was open, too conveniently angled on the table, and a phone was sticking halfway out of it, camera lens barely visible. "Are you recording this?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She blinked. "What? No? Don't be ridiculous." I stood, walked to the purse, didn't touch it, just looked at her. She gave a short, nervous laugh. "Okay, fine. Maris thought it might help. If you said anything dramatic." I nodded slowly. "So this is a setup." Celine straightened, her mask slipping. "No, it's damage control. You're spiraling. We're trying to keep things from getting messy." "Messy," I repeated. "Like truth?" She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "Maris didn't ask. She demanded. She made it clear I'm not part of the family unless I earn it. And now you're here, trying to make sure I stay quiet." There was a pause, tight, hot, heavy. "You came here to deliver a message," I said, calmly. "You've delivered it. You can go." Celine stood but didn't move. She looked at me like I was speaking a language she didn't understand. "You're not being fair," she said. "I'm being clear." She grabbed her purse, visibly frustrated now. "Mom made those lemon bars. You used to like them." "I used to like a lot of things," I said, before I realized what came with them. She shoved the box closer. "Family means doing things you don't want to." "And family also means protecting your dignity," I replied. "We just have different definitions." Celine stared at me, speechless for once. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out. I waited until I heard the building door close downstairs before sitting again. My hands trembled. Not from fear, but adrenaline. The lemon bars sat on the table, perfectly cut, arranged like an apology too late. I lifted the lid. There was a folded note on top. I opened it, expecting something from Maris. But the handwriting was Celine's. Just 4 words. "You'll regret this later." I stared at the note, but what chilled me more was the envelope tucked underneath it. The morning after Celine left, I didn't open the blinds, I didn't check my phone, I just started cleaning, not because anyone asked me to, but because I needed to feel like I had control over something. Anything. The air was damp from the rain outside, and Nina Simone played softly in the background, her voice filling the space like an old friend who didn't ask questions. By the time I got to wiping down the kitchen counter, the envelope Celine left was still sitting there, unopened beside the lemon bars. I'd been avoiding it like it might bite. But eventually, I sat down, unfolded the flap, and pulled out the contents. A printout. Multiple pages. Email headers. I froze. The first subject line read, "New Year's Eve. Let's finalize." My eyes scanned the names. Everyone in the family was looped in. Everyone except me. My name wasn't mentioned directly, not once, but I saw it. The jabs, the avoidance, the careful wording. Let's keep the vibe clean this year. Too much drama last time. We don't need more liabilities showing up. You know who I mean. And then, from Maris herself. If she insists on coming, she better bring bleach and gloves. I stared at those words until they blurred. Liability. Not daughter-in-law, not family, just a problem to be managed. I thought of the times I'd driven Maris to medical appointments when Kellen was too busy. The Thanksgiving. I stayed up until 2 a.m., helping Celine replate her failed pie like it was nothing. The time I quietly loaned them rent money. I did all of it without a word. Not for praise, but because I believed that love meant showing up. Apparently, showing up made me a liability. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I lit a candle, sat back at the table, opened my journal, and for the first time, I stopped writing like someone trying to fix a mess. I wrote like someone taking inventory. I wrote down everything, the slights, the dismissals, the pattern. At the top of the page, I scrawled, "The architect of disdain, Maris, not a mother-in-law anymore, not to me, not in spirit." My voice came out without warning, quiet, but certain. I wasn't born to be anyone's maid of emotional labor. I heard my father's voice years ago at the dinner table. Don't raise your voice. Improve your argument. I never forgot that, and today it felt like more than a quote. It felt like a tool. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through old messages, screenshotted everything that stung. I opened a new folder and labeled it. For me, not for revenge. This wasn't about proving a point to them anymore. This was about no longer abandoning myself to keep their image intact. Later that evening, I FaceTimed Elysia. Her dorm wall was strung with lights, her curls pulled into a bun. She looked tired, but alert. "Hey, Mom, you okay?" "I'm getting there," I said. "Hey, let me ask you something." "Shoot. Do you think family is something you owe, no matter how they treat you?" She tilted her head, thoughtful. "I think you don't have to be family with people just because they share your bloodline." I exhaled. Something unclenched. "But sometimes," I replied, "silence makes you complicit." We talked for an hour. Not just about the mess, but about her classes, her new roommate, even a funny story about someone getting locked out in a towel. Before we hung up, she said, "I'll come home early for New Year's. Just say the word." That meant more than she knew. After the call, I sat still. For once, not thinking about Maris, I was thinking about legacy, about what I was teaching my daughter through my silence, through my tolerance. Was I showing her how to endure or how to leave when enough is enough? I was closing my laptop when it pinged with a new message from Kellen. "Mom says she'll apologize. Just come help out first." Attached was a photo, the whole family already gathered. Underneath it, his caption read, "We're waiting on you." Rain sluiced the driveway as I pulled into Maris's driveway. The overcast sky matched my mood, heavy and expectant. I sat in the car a moment, inhaled, loosened my grip, then stepped onto the stone porch. Even before I knocked, the door opened. Celine stood there, a practiced smile on her lips and her eyes calculating the moment I walked in. "We didn't expect you this early," she said, voice bright. But the welcome felt hollow. I walked past her into the foyer. The house, grand and cold, bore all the festive trimmings, lights, wreaths, ribbons, but in none of the frames was I in a photo. No card addressed to me anywhere. Subtle exclusions, but they echoed loudly. I followed Celine's lead into the living room. The crowd chatted, wine glasses chiming. I forced a smile, reminding myself I would not shrink tonight. Near the entrance table lay the invitation cards. I paused. All the cards bore names: Kellen, Celine, neighbors, everyone but me. When Celine noticed, she hurried over. "Oh," she squeaked. "It must have gotten lost in the mail." She handed me a blank card. Family dinner. No name. My heart twisted. Turning it over, I saw fine print. Optional attendance. Must help serve. The message hit with quiet precision. It wasn't an invitation. It was a demand. They seated me at the long dining table, but the place felt like a void. In the lull before dinner, speeches were announced. Elysia stepped forward, smiling. Her poem began, and then, silence. The mic died. Applause flickered weakly. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Murmurs filled the gaps. Maris leaned toward me, whispering, "Technology fails. It's nothing personal." But her tone carried something sharp. The silence beside me felt deliberate, cruel. My chest tightened. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. I slipped away to the hallway, my heart pounding. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering. The recording Celine once tried to make, I'd saved it, backed it up. My fingers scrolled. My journal entry flashed in my mind. I am not attending on their terms. Tonight, I would speak, but on my terms. I returned to the dining room, head held straight, eyes open. The rest of the table watched. The hostess stood to toast. She raised her glass. To family, together. The room hushed. Maris gestured to me. I stood uncertainly. Before I could speak, the lights snapped off. Darkness swallowed the room. A lone spotlight flickered and landed on me. Faces floated in that narrow beam. Expectant, fearful, accusing. I swallowed. I stood steadfast. The silence stretched. The spotlight wasn't planned. A power flicker, maybe a fuse surge, but it landed straight on me like it knew exactly who needed to be seen. The room froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Wine glasses stayed suspended in the air. All eyes turned toward me, waiting, maybe for a joke, a breakdown, or a polite little thank you. I didn't flinch. "Since I'm standing," I said, glancing around, steadying my breath. "I might as well say something." I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I spoke slow, measured. I talked about what it feels like to be erased while still being expected to show up, to scrub grout and play nice while your name gets scratched off invitation lists. I said what I needed to say, not to shock them, but to unchain myself. A few guests shifted in their chairs, uncomfortable. A couple gave me soft nods. Celine leaned in toward Maris and smirked. I sat back down, not expecting applause, and none came, but the air had changed. It was tighter now. Charged. Dinner wrapped awkwardly. Chatter came back in forced waves. Everyone. I arrived at the banquet hall in the reception wing just as twilight fell. The dining room was warm, lights soft, the scent of roast chicken heavy in the air. I wore a dress I bought with my own money, suited for me, not for anyone's strings. I passed guests exchanging pleasantries with crisp smiles, but their glances flicked toward me, assessing. I noticed Celine's eyes narrow, then slide away. I slid into my seat and opened the menu card in front of me, only to see my name replaced by helper. My heart thudded. The insult was quiet, but sharp. I set the card aside. The first course arrived. I lifted a fork, held it midair, and exhaled slowly. Yes, tension filled the room. But I would eat. I would watch. I would not let them see me break. When the salad course was placed before me, a cloth napkin lay folded atop. I unfolded it gracefully. Instead of my name, the napkin bore the phrase, "Daughter-in-law, please serve." My fingers trembled for a second. I felt Maris's gaze, lips pressed thin. I saw Celine shift uneasily opposite me. A guest at the corner table chuckled softly, head swiveled. I nearly dropped my fork. Instead, I set it down. I drew in a slow breath. I would not shout. I would speak clearly when it counted. A man, Maris's colleague, leaned forward across the table. Over wine, he asked casually, "So, why don't you live closer so you can help more?" His voice was polite, his insult hidden in civility. A hush fell. I answered evenly, "I help where I'm wanted, not where I'm summoned." A ripple moved across faces. He shifted, murmured. Maris cleared her throat. "Let's not make this awkward," she said. But I felt the heat of all the eyes burning against me. Inside, my pulse thundered. Betrayal stung deeper than any confrontation so far. For years, I'd accepted polite exclusion, praise in front, erasure behind. I remembered times I carried Maris's packages, accepted holiday gifts without ever being invited into the room that mattered. I whispered under my breath, "Calm doesn't mean weak." Alicia's face caught my eye across the table. She offered a small nod, steady, unafraid. That gesture anchored me. Under the table, I opened my phone quietly and sent a message to a friend I trusted, with an image of the napkin. This wasn't about vindication, it was about truth. I would no longer be invisible. Dessert plates were served. Just then, the lights flickered. Only for a heartbeat. But when they came back on, the spotlight rested not on me, but on Celine's plate. And her napkin, embroidered in the same mocking script. "Tonight, you serve me." The room went silent. Gasps rippled. I swallowed. I rose, slow, deliberate. The room held its breath. After dessert, guests drifted toward the drawing room. The air was thick, like everyone knew something was coming, but didn't know when. The walls were lined with family portraits, every frame gold-trimmed, perfectly lit. Smiling faces stared down like reminders of who mattered. Maris clinked her wineglass and motioned for quiet. "Let's hear her side," she said, gesturing to me. "Everyone deserves that." A hush fell. I stood. My knees were steady, but my palms were cold. I looked around the room, faces I'd served, sat beside, cooked for, carried gifts to, now watching me like a guest speaker. I cleared my throat. "I'm not here to accuse. I'm here to say what's been buried." My voice didn't shake. I talked about the quiet exclusions, the missing seat at holidays, the texts left unread, the birthdays forgotten. I spoke of the silences that cut sharper than words, of how it feels to walk into a room and be tolerated. Some shifted. One woman's brow furrowed. Celine crossed her arms. Maris didn't move. Then Tobias, Maris's longtime neighbor, cleared his throat. "If I may," he said, standing near the back. "I've seen her, Lyra, organizing the garage sale, prepping holiday boxes for the shelter, taking care of guests when no one else looked up. Never once asked for credit, just did it." He paused, and I never once saw anyone thank her for it. It was dead silent. A few heads nodded. Someone murmured, "That's true." Maris's lips thinned like she'd bitten something sour. Celine shot him a glare that could have cracked glass. She wasn't ready for someone to break the pattern. Maris turned her body slightly and raised her hand toward the gallery wall. "We updated the portraits," she said lightly. "Fresh start. Forward-looking. That's all." One giant portrait of Celine stood in place of where mine had been. Her posed in front of the house, radiant, arms crossed like she owned the land beneath her. Next to it, a blank gold frame. "We needed someone who looks forward, not backward," Maris added, eyes locked on me. Polite applause followed. Awkward, soft, unsure. I stepped closer. "You didn't update it. You erased me." The room froze. Muriel, an older aunt by marriage, whispered under her breath. "What does she expect? Be written back in like nothing?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it was loud enough. I stood there, looking at that empty frame, the blank gold outline. I could feel the burn of years pushing up through my chest. The moments I swallowed, the moments I smiled, the moments I helped pack their stories while mine went unspoken. And yet, I remembered Tobias's voice, the fact that he saw me when my own family didn't. I wasn't alone. I looked at Alicia. She didn't speak, didn't move, but her eyes held me, firm, proud. I whispered under my breath, "You don't get to write me out." I straightened. I will not dissolve into their delusion. I stepped forward, my voice even. "The history you choose to show doesn't erase mine." As the words left my lips, the lights flickered. A second, then darkness. A crash. Glass. When the lights came back, a single frame had fallen. Celine's portrait. The glass cracked wide across her smile. It lay at my feet in shards. Maris's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw fear. The last day of the year brought a kind of stillness that didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the calm before something snapped. Maris's home glowed in polished glass and gold trim, everything placed just so. You'd think perfection could drown out truth if you wrapped it in enough luxury. It couldn't. I arrived just before 6. The valet didn't recognize me until I handed over the keys. Inside, the music was soft jazz, the smell of truffle oil lingering in the air. I wore a black velvet dress, simple, understated. But mine, no stylist, no borrowed pearls from Maris, just me. Kellen greeted me at the door. He looked tired, not like he hadn't slept, but like he'd run out of lies to hold up his posture. "You came," he said quietly. "I always do," I answered. Guests mingled in small circles. Celine was unusually still, nursing her drink in the corner, eyes bouncing between conversations. Maris floated among people like a seasoned host, polished smile never cracking. But I saw the stiffness in her hands, the way she gripped her glass like it might slip. Everyone felt it, the tension humming through the room, waiting for release. Dinner began. Shrimp cocktail. Buttered asparagus. Every plate perfect. Every conversation surface level. Then, just before dessert, Maris stood, lifted her champagne flute, and smiled like nothing ever cracked around her. "As we welcome a new year, I'd like to say a few words. But better yet, Lara," she turned toward me. "Why don't you offer a toast? One last word before the year ends." A few eyebrows raised. Celine smirked. I could feel the trap under the velvet. I stood slowly, held my glass loosely. "This year," I began, "taught me something." I looked around the room, at faces that had ignored me at holidays, nodded past me in conversations, let me cook and clean and disappear. It taught me that silence, comfortable silence, is dangerous. Because it keeps the wrong people warm and leaves the right ones outside. No one moved. I used to think belonging was something you earned, that if you showed up enough, helped enough, stayed quiet enough, you'd finally be allowed in. But I was wrong. Belonging in this family is something you're granted, or denied, and the conditions change without warning. I looked directly at Kellen. His shoulders dropped. When you stayed quiet, it wasn't to keep peace, it was to keep control. The weight of the room shifted. A fork clinked. Someone exhaled too loudly. I raised my glass. To truth, even when it makes the room uncomfortable. The silence was thick. Then came the slow clap. "Celine." "Bravo," she said, sarcastic. Self-pity never sparkled so well. Before I could open my mouth, Aunt Muriel cut in from across the table. "No, Celine, that's enough." It was the kind of voice that stopped time. Celine froze, stunned. Muriel looked around. "Some of us have watched this long enough." And just like that, heads nodded. Small, brave gestures, a subtle ripple of agreement. Even Maris blinked too fast, her composure cracking for a moment. Kellen rose, reached across the table for my hand. A gesture of apology, or maybe rescue. I didn't take it. I nodded once. A thank you. But that chapter was closed. As midnight approached, the room grew louder. People shifted toward the windows. Glasses refilled. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. I stood near the edge of the crowd, eyes on the clock, not the fireworks. 3, 2, 1. I whispered to myself, "This isn't an ending. It's a beginning." The room erupted. Champagne popped. Fireworks bloomed outside the tall windows. My phone buzzed. A new message. No name. "Meet me tomorrow. I have what you're looking for." I stepped out onto the porch, away from the noise. The wind cut across my face, sharp and real. The new year didn't bring peace. It brought purpose. The waves had a rhythm that didn't ask for attention. It just existed. Steady, simple, sure of itself. I sat by the window of a small cafe that overlooked the coast, nursing a mug of chamomile tea that had gone lukewarm. It was January 2nd, and for the first time in a long while, my body felt settled. My mind wasn't racing. My breath came easy. Elysia sat across from me with a pack of crayons and a sketch pad, completely content. Her little fingers moved in gentle, absent-minded swirls. We had come to this small town 2 days ago. No plans, no expectations, just space. Space to think, or maybe not think at all. I'd started journaling again. Nothing profound, just thoughts. The kind I'd spent years suppressing in the corners of grocery lists and bedtime routines. There was no more pretending now. No more trying to squeeze myself into a version of womanhood that looked good in other people's photos, but felt like a cage in my chest. The silence, for once, wasn't a punishment. It was peace. The waiter brought over a small envelope, no name, no handwriting on the outside, just plain. I opened it slowly, unsure if it was something I wanted or something I needed. Inside, a letter. Maris's handwriting, elegant, careful. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't offer excuses. She just told her story. She wrote about losing her mother too young, about marrying into power and learning fast that silence kept the peace, about how control became her shield when love felt too unstable to trust, about how I reminded her of herself, not the parts she liked, but the ones she buried. "You were never my enemy," she wrote. "You were the mirror I couldn't face." That line, I read it again and again. I didn't cry. I just sat there, letting the truth settle. Not because it fixed anything, it didn't, but because it freed me from the need to keep proving I'd been right all along. I stepped outside with the letter folded in my coat pocket. The wind touched my face, but it didn't sting. I thought about all the versions of me I'd had to bury to survive their approval. Forgiveness isn't a gift you hand someone. It's a door you walk through so you can keep going. I whispered the words to myself. I'm not carrying this anymore. I sent her a text. 4 words. I see you. I release you. That was enough. Later that day, I called Kellen, not to reopen wounds, just to close them properly. You're a good father, I said. But being a partner takes more than presence. It takes courage. I hope you find it. He didn't argue. He didn't apologize. He listened. For the first time in years, he just listened. I met Toby for coffee that afternoon. He smiled when he saw me, handed me a small notebook, blank pages. I think it's time for your story now, he said. I laughed. That's the first thing someone's handed me in a long time that didn't have instructions on it. You're the kind of woman stories are written about, Lara. I smiled. Not because I needed the validation, but because I finally believed it. I rented a small workspace in town. Nothing fancy. A desk, a lamp, a bulletin board. It's where I'll start offering consulting again. Quietly. On my terms. For women who, like me, thought they had to shrink in order to survive. That night, I lit a single candle. Not for grief, for grace. I recorded a voice memo on my phone. Just for me. Sometimes the family you fight to stay in isn't the one that changes. It's the one that teaches you how to build your own. Elysia climbed into my lap and wrapped her arms around my neck. You feel safe now, she whispered. I rested my chin on her head and said the truth out loud. I finally am.